Hi, everybody. I'm Ryan McNeil, and this is Builder by Day. Today, I'm having a conversation with my boys here, Derek Taylor, Scott Smith, former guests of the show, fellow residential construction industry members. I figure we should reconvene here. I guess we're like a week from now. This election will be all over. We'll either be all like crying and complaining, or in some state of depression, perhaps, if it doesn't go the right way, I guess.
Well, I'm either going to be living here or I'm going to be living somewhere else.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, making plans to move. Yeah, that's terrible, man. You guys, so Derek, you were on the first. So for anyone that's listening, I'll just set the stage here. Derek was the first guest that we had.
That's first okay, but I didn't want to be your first guest.
I did that way. And when I did that way, I said, Scott's going to say, that's okay. I didn't want to be on the podcast. So Derek was guest number one, and Scotty was guest number somewhere early on. Was it before Christmas that you were on? Mm-hmm. And then, like, basically since the first episode that we did, then the whole thing's been pretty much hijacked by political conversation because it's hard to get away from this stuff.
Impossible. Yeah. In fact, I can't remember a time when all I do is talk about politics. When I go to my parents for dinner, we talk about politics. When I sit with friends, we talk about politics. Right. When I go to a family function with Michelle, we talk about politics. Yeah. It's constant. It's crazy. I don't remember doing this before.
No. Well, you never did it before. It used to be considered rude to even ask people about their politics, right?
So we're at some kind of crossroads. It feels like a real crossroads.
Yeah, absolutely. Man.
Yeah. Do you think, I often wondered, do we talk more about politics now because we're older and we didn't pay much attention to it?
Well, I mean, that could
when we were younger.
That could be a part of it. Sure, you get, as you get older, you probably get a little wiser, hopefully, and you realize that politics do impact your life.
Yes,
but this is not. This isn't that normal transition from younger to older. There's some problems, man.
Yeah,
this is a problem.
And some things are surfacing. For example, Fauci's net worth doubled during COVID.
Oh, yeah, man. All these, like down in the U.S., man, these politicians and those that are involved in administration.
They are running off the ships.
It's crazy.
Corruption. A lot of corruption.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, doubled.
Yeah, and then what I find interesting is you get people that, when down in the U.S., they're exposing all this corruption. We're doing the same thing up here, but everyone up here is like, they don't care. It doesn't matter what you say. Oh, we got 11 traitors in the government? Oh, just give that a week. They'll forget about that. Remember that?
Yeah.
For all we know, it's like 11 people who are currently in Carney's government are going to be ministers. They've never said who that is. Instead, the media spin around. They focus all their attention on Poilievre's security clearance, which he has addressed like 100 times, how this is not an issue. He just did it again on the debate last week.
Yeah, I thought that debate was really well. He did really well.
Oh, dude, when I watched that, Amy and I were watching that. We keep looking at each other like, I don't understand what anyone is looking at here. If you're looking at this debate, if you're watching this, and you're not coming to the conclusion that Pierre Poilievre is the guy we should be voting for, then I don't know what you're watching.
Yeah.
I don't know what you're looking at.
But as we get older and you get a few bucks in your pocket and this stuff starts to affect you more.
Yeah, like when I was 22 years old, I didn't give a shit about capital gains. I didn't have any capital. Yeah. Right? I didn't have any gains.
Yeah.
So it didn't matter. But you get to be 45 years old, and when people start talking about taxing capital gains, it starts to resonate a little more.
The one that killed me recently was they are eyeing up the equity in your home.
Yeah.
Your personal residence?
Yes.
Yeah, I saw that.
Like,
think about that, man.
And then that's a liberal idea.
Oh, of course it is.
Yes.
Yeah. They threw that out before. And like, if you were a baby boomer, they have all the equity. The boomers have all the equity, right? But if you're a baby boomer right now and you're voting liberal and you're not aware that these guys are very likely coming for some portion of the equity that's in your home, then you're crazy, man.
Yeah.
Can you imagine however they determine that, whether it's, what are they going to do? Go back to, if you're living in your home and you've been in it since 1975 and you bought it for $100,000 and now it's worth $1 million. And so if they assess you at $900,000 in capital gains and they want whatever percentage of that, whatever it is, let's say what were they taxing?
It's half of 50%.
That's right. That's right. So let's just say, for argument's sake, they were taxing you a couple $100,000. But you might have the equity in your home, but you don't necessarily want to go put some kind of financing on and suck the equity out, because you'd have to sell your home to realize the equity.
Yeah, right? That's what I thought immediately. Maybe people should just take these massive lines of credit against their home and create no equity.
No, but they won't do that. You'll still have the that's what you'll have to do to pay the CRA. You'll have to go set up because CRA is going to send you a bill, say, dude, you owe us $200,000.
It's scary, man, because it used to be the ultimate tax shelter, the ultimate safe place for your money.
Your own home.
Is your own home.
Yeah.
It was your safe place.
Yeah,
It seems like nothing's safe.
No, nothing's safe.
Yeah.
They'll come for anything.
So the Conservatives have this new plan as well. And I remember you had told me this in the US years ago. You told me if you sell and have a capital gain, you can roll it into another investment within a certain period of time. And I thought that was a great idea. And it looks like there's ideas to bring that to Canada.
That's great.
Right?
Reinvest in the United States or reinvest in Canada.
Yeah.
Which is good for everyone.
Of course it is.
Yeah, well, down in the States, if you bought a home, like say, let's use the example of like flipping a home.
Yes.
Right? Up here, that's a very tiny little section of the market that would flip homes. I don't know anybody that flips homes.
Yeah.
Right? Not like you see down in the U.S. But let's say for instance, in the U.S., you bought a home for $100,000 and you put, let's say you bought the home for $200,000 and you put $100,000 into it and then you sold it for $4. In theory, there's $100,000 there in capital gains. In this country, you're getting taxed on that $100,000. Yeah. And down in the U.S., if you sell that property and then there's a certain period of time, I don't know if it's 3 months or 6 months, whatever it is, but if you take that money and then you go buy another property, you don't pay capital gains. So you get to take the full amount of the return on your investment and use it in the next property.
And Poilievre's essentially wanting to put a similar
Yeah,
program
he said
in
the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
So basically, if you, and it's not just for business owners; it's also for like
Individuals.
anybody that would realize any kind of capital gain.
Yeah.
Like let's say
I think it's a great idea.
Yeah, you could make a long list of reasons why that would, in many ways, could help like the housing crisis, for instance, because you have people who own property, but they don't want to do anything with it because they don't want to trigger these gains. But if they could do something with it that would not trigger the gains, and it makes more financial sense, and they free up some land or free up some property, whatever, right? It's interesting now when you look at the polls and you see that essentially everyone other than the boomers the majority of everyone other than the boomers are voting conservative, according to the polls. But the boomers are voting liberal. But it's very interesting to see, like I was saying to Amy the other night. So in other words, the young people who we all give a hard time. Oh, they don't know, they don't work hard, they don't have the responsibility. That the boomers are like, oh, these young kids. The young kids are voting conservative. They're voting for like fiscal responsibility and taking charge and cutting crime. And the boomers are like having a hippie moment again, right?
They don't want change.
Exactly. They're like, they just want to keep sailing along. And it's very odd I find it odd that older people who are the most comfortable generation that's ever lived, the baby boomers have lived the easiest life of any humans ever in the history of humans.
And we're paying for that.
Right.
Lifestyle.
And that's fine. And I'm not faulting them for that. I mean, it's a circumstance. But when the young people right now are struggling, and then you look at it and it's no secret. Like every day you can just pick up the news and it's young children, I shouldn't say children, young people will never own a home. It's like every day it's in the news. And if you're somebody who's 70 years old, I don't know how you can vote against that. Like, I don't know how you can vote to leave the people behind you. And
younger people can't see clear past what's going on in the world. They just can't see going forward anymore like it is now. So they crave change.
Yeah, well, there is no forward. Did you guys see the? I don't know when the report originally came out, but yesterday it was circling around a lot. This Privy Council of Canada, the government of Canada, essentially released this report about the state of the country in 15 years. Did you guys see that?
No.
This was like, did you see back in, I think it was like 2023 when the RCMP put out that report that, well, I shouldn't say they put it out. It was, I think they found it, people sourced it through like the, what do they call that when you go chasing down documents? Freedom of
Information Act.
Yeah, Freedom of Information Act. So they got a bunch of it was redacted, but basically the RCMP was saying, this is no good, man. Like in 5 years' time, crime's going to continue to increase and we're not going to have enough police to look after it and blah, blah, blah. Like there was these things that were going to happen. This was the RCMP saying this. And when I talked to like when I play golf with guys that are Halifax Regional Police officers or RCMP officers, and the topic comes up, you talk about whatever it is. These guys say the same thing, man. They're like, we're arresting the same guys every week. Then you arrest the same guy 2 days later, and then you get a call, and 3 days later you're arresting the same guy for the same thing again, and it's just getting out of control. But this report that came out, this is the government of Canada. This is a nonpartisan group. This isn't like liberals or conservatives. This is a nonpartisan group, the Privy Council, who puts out this report that says between now and 2040, the path that we're on, between now and 2040, the country of Canada is going to deteriorate to the point where our society is going to deteriorate to basically the annihilation of the middle class. Mm-hmm. We'll get to a point where, in this report, they actually say that by 2040, illegal hunting and so on will be happening all over the place because people will be hunting for their food in this country. There will be this divide between like rich and poor. The middle class will be gone. You're either going to be rich or poor. And if you're poor, you're like hunting rabbits poor, right? And then, of course, you know what happens there. It's like Canada becomes any other divided country.
Yeah, that's third world country.
That's right. So you have people with money who are living, they talk about like how some cities and communities will become gated, and it'll be like you live inside the gate or you live in the hellhole. Now, I told Amy, I'm like, don't worry. We won't be living in either one of those places. Yeah. We'll be living in a different country. Mm-hmm. But for the people that are going to be here who can't afford to leave, and then the other thing that's amazing about that is like, last night we're watching some information about it on YouTube from different people that are talking about it. And I said to Amy, I'm like, what do you think the chances are that the CBC is talking about this government issued report right now? Zero chance.
Yeah, of course.
They're not even mentioning it.
Yeah.
But if they were actually a national broadcaster whose interest it was...
They used to be.
Yeah. If their interest was actually communicating important things to Canadians, then that should have been the number one thing on the top of the newscast that night. You can't find it anywhere. Yeah. You got to scour the internet just to find this thing, but it exists.
20 years ago, I used to listen to CBC radio in my truck, driving between job sites. And I always thought, oh, okay, you're going to hear shit you're not going to want to hear because CBC just... They don't take sides. They just straight up tells you what's going on. Right. Today, the exact opposite.
Is there a mainstream media news outlet that is not partisan, one side or the other?
No. And then the rise of like the independent journalists, YouTubers, and so on is enormous, man. These guys are getting more viewership than all the mainstream media combined. But the mainstream media, they label anyone that's not them as like some far-right extremist nut job group. It's crazy, man. If you tell the truth, you are a far-right extremist.
It's hard to believe.
That's the country.
And why is that?
Well, because
people don't want to hear the truth.
Well, the people...
Because it generally hurts their feelings or they get offended.
But why are they all so left-leaning? I feel like CBC, there's more... It seems like there's more left.
Well, because they're being paid to be that way. Regardless of what the issue is on the left, there's a certain percentage of the population who they will go with whatever society has determined is like the good side, the right side. Not right as in right and left, but like the side to be on.
It's the side that everybody will agree with on social media. Social media has such a huge part in today's society. People I know, they temper what they say because they don't want social media to cancel them,
right?
Whether they have a business or whatever it is they're running.
Earlier this week or last week, I made a couple of those videos, like for the first time ever, where you just take your phone, you turn it around, and you like shoot the shit into your iPhone. And I did it. The only reason I'm doing that is because at this point, I feel like I'm in like desperation mode. If I can do anything, if I can take 10 minutes and say something, and if it could in some way sway someone to vote conservative versus liberal, that's worth it for me, right? Because in a week's time, that's all over, man. Like I told Brendan, in a week's time, we scrub all these videos that had anything to do with politics because it's irrelevant. And we're just, at that point, realizing we're just working with whatever situation we have from here onward. But you're right, that people, there's more though. There's a growing portion of the population that are willing to speak out. But you still, when you really do the math on it, you realize, but there's really only a handful of faces that you see on the right, I guess, when it comes out of social media, right? There's only a handful of them. Even in this country, there's like, you could probably sit down and list 4 or 5 social media influencers who are in your feed. You know what I mean? In the U.S. there'd be a lot more, but the two markets don't cross over. But then there's like a certain percentage of the population that are, you know, they're more intellectual, academic types. Like we were talking about earlier, and they're really taking like a journalistic approach. Like Josh, who was on there was on here from the Elevate podcast, right? Like you were saying earlier, anyone who, you know, with half a brain in your head, you look at that and you realize that's a full-time job, man. That's like every day he's got to be paying attention to what's going on in the news and then pulling down all the headlines and reading through them and finding the stuff to talk about and finding some supporting documentation and so on. So it takes a lot of effort to do that correctly, because you also don't want to look like a clown. You don't want to pull something up and have it be fake news or whatever. You got to be sensible. But then I was saying to Amy last night, I'm like, when I watch it, because I watch these guys, I watch Josh's podcast, and Jasmine Lane has a podcast. Amy likes Jasmine's podcast. She tunes into that one. And there's a few other people and Canadians that I watch from time to time. But then there's like where I fit in that dynamic. Like I tell Amy, I'm like, this isn't me. See what these guys are doing here. Like I've done some similar stuff where I've been like vocal about politics or so on, but that's not what I'm doing. These guys are in a different place than me, man. I'm like, you would be like me, Scotty, in that when I say things, I'm trying to be diplomatic about it to the best of my abilities, but at the same time, I sort of want you to come at me, right? I'm saying it thinking like, I'm happy to argue with you about it, but like you better, if your argument is I'm being mean, that's not the argument. If your argument is you're offended by the truth, that's not going to get you very far either. But if you have an intellectual argument, then I want to hear it. I don't want to be wrong. Like when I say something, I'm not saying it just to be opinionated and be mean or turn somebody off. I'm just trying to say what other people are thinking but not saying, perhaps. Like if you work for the government, if you work for the Canadian military, you don't say a word. You're not allowed. You're not allowed to open your mouth. Have you ever heard anybody, have you ever seen anywhere in social media any member of the Canadian Armed Forces voicing their opinion about politics?
That's interesting. No.
They're not allowed. They're in writing, they are not allowed to do it.
Okay.
If you have, they're not even allowed to like go to Facebook and just post something that says, you know, I'm supporting Carney. I don't think they're even allowed to do that. They're very much on lockdown when it comes to that. And if you work for the government, you're not saying anything either.
But we're on lockdown as a society.
That's right. We're going to be even more on lockdown. If the Liberals win this next election, man, this will be like...
The problem with honesty is most people don't want to hear it. And I struggle with it, as you know, because, you know, I'm like, I have no filter, right? So
right.
Most people say, oh, God, here he's going to speak, oh, God. And I don't speak to be mean. I just speak straight up, man, to get to the point.
Yeah, I kind of feel like you and I would be in a similar situation where it's like, if we're saying something that is truthful, because we're not making it up for dramatic effect, but if we say something and it's truthful and the person who hears it is offended by it or whatever it might be, well, that's not my intention. I'm not trying to offend you, but it annoys me that I have to bring it up to begin with. I don't want to have to be having a podcast chirping at people about voting Conservative so the country doesn't burn to the ground. I didn't plan on doing that. I got a business to run. It's like I told you before we sat down, man, the best thing about this election being over in a week is that we can just move on with it, whatever it is, because it's very distracting, man.
Yeah. I'm more interested in what I don't know than what I do know.
Sure.
So I'd be happy to have a conversation with you. If you can change my mind,
Exactly.
great, but change it with facts. Love to have that conversation.
That's right.
Problem is most people, when they start to feel like they're not winning the conversation, then comes the emotion and the tears and the
and the labeling,
you're
and the
offending
name
me
calling.
and you're labeling people.
Yeah, you're a
and how can
bigot,
you-
and that's what it happens.
I have some really close friends that would definitely be left-leaning, and one thing I enjoy is debating with them and talking with them. And when it's all over, they're still my good friends. I don't hold anything against them. I think that's something that I'm able to do. But sometimes when I make points at them, I actually feel like I'm upsetting them. You know, they get more agitated than I do. Whereas when the conversation's over, we're still buddies. It doesn't have to be, you know, I don't want to talk to you anymore.
You're not my real dad.
And we've had lots of conversations, you and I, Ryan and I, lots of conversations that we disagree.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean I want Ryan to stop the truck and let me get out. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you don't have to take your ball and go home.
Yeah,
if you don't
that's
disagree, right?
That's
Okay,
right.
so and I'll think about it, and maybe next time we
Exactly.
talk about it, he may change my mind. But
I hear you, yeah, because there's a part of me, man, that I also just like to argue with people. I do, man. I don't mean argue as in like insulting, heated conversation. I just like to have a debate. If there's a debate to be had, and if I know anything about it, then I want to get in there. Now, if I don't know anything about it, I want to watch two people who do know about it have the debate, and I want to learn from it. Yeah. Right? I don't want to jump into a debate with Jordan Peterson and get smoked intellectually. Not that I would be disagreeing with him, but I want to watch people talk things around in a circle, go, it's good point, and then make my decision as to where I think the truth is somewhere in there. But if it's like, if we're having a conversation about whatever it is, and if there's whether it's something on social media, whatever it might be, and whether it's something I say or something I respond to or whatever, if somebody then chimes in, wants to argue with me, then we're going to have an argument. Mm-hmm. What I do find in social media, though, is that most of the people who would argue with me, like 99% of them are anonymous. Very few people using their real name
keyboard
will ever have an argument with me, right? Ever. And I mean even just have an opposing view. Sometimes I'll make a comment and I realize some people may disagree with it. And I'm kind of waiting for that person that has half a brain in their head to come back and say, well, it's not actually true. But it never happens. What I get is, some anonymous person that tells me I'm a right-wing nut job or whatever it is, right? At some point, you just got to...
This is probably going to be the best attended election in a while.
Yeah.
Well, I think it would be the most important in our lifetime.
Yeah, the last couple elections,
Would you
it was
agree with
almost
that?
like,
Oh, yeah.
God,
Absolutely.
I got to go out and vote.
Yeah,
Man, I
yeah.
can't wait to vote.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I already voted. I went early election. There was like...
Oh, you did?
Yeah. I think we waited in line for probably 45 minutes or something. That's just right here in Fall River. There's a little town here on Good Friday at like noontime.
Really?
Yeah. I'd say we were there by the time we voted, so we were definitely there for an hour.
So with your, all the research stuff you've been doing, what are your predictions?
I don't know, man. Like...
Is it close?
I don't know. I mean, I have no idea. There's some interesting things, though. Like, first of all, the similarities between what's happening here and what went on in the U.S. is like strikingly similar, right? You have the leftist party who just inserted someone that no one ever voted for, what they did with Camilla Harris. Remember, they're like, oh, by the way, she's the candidate. And everyone's like, oh, that's neat. No one ever voted. They did the same thing here. They just go, okay, plop, there's the guy you're voting for, even though no one.
By the way, he's the prime minister, too.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and he just spent $43 billion and no one voted on it.
That's right. Exactly. So that's similar. And then the way the polls in the U.S., when that happened, according to the polls, Camilla Harris jumped way up and she was polling at 60%, and Trump was 40 or whatever, right? And then it started coming back a bit, and then it twisted around. And you look at the polling for Canada, it's like almost following exactly the same thing. And as you know, those polls were horseshit down there. Trump smoked her in the election, won all the swing states, the popular vote. I mean, he won with authority down there.
Yeah.
So what I hope is going to happen, what I hope's going on is the same thing. But I don't know, man. And then they say, people say strong voter turnout, especially like early voting, is indicative of people voting, is normally bad news for the incumbent.
Yes.
Right? And here in Fall River, for instance, the incumbent is a liberal. So I look at that, okay, great. So if there's strong, I mean, across the country, it's pretty much that way because, we did have a liberal government. So, but who knows if that's true or not? For all we know, it's a whole bunch of baby boomers lining up to vote. I don't know. Now, when I was there, they certainly weren't all gray-haired boomers. There's a pretty good mix of age groups. There were some young people there, 20s. Yeah. So one thing I was going to bring up, since you're here, Scotty, like on the housing plan for these two, I've been, anything I can to like, try to paint the picture a little bit better for anyone that's considering trying to decide who to vote for from a builder's perspective. You and I can certainly speak to these different housing plans, these plans that the Liberal Party and Conservative Party have put forth. To me, it's an absolute no-brainer for two main reasons. First of all, the Liberals just basically stole Poilievre's plan and watered it down a bit, but they're both saying that they will remove the HST on new homes if they're elected. So 5% is coming off the top. But
GST, right?
GST.
Sorry, GST. Yeah, we call it HST. Sorry, 5% GST to be removed. They both say that. But the Liberals say, but only for first-time home buyers and only up to $1 million. And the Conservatives are saying, no, it'll be the 5%
1.3.
GST up to 1.3 and for everyone. And I don't know about you, man, but I don't build many houses for first-time home buyers. So if they limit it to first-time home buyers, it's going to have a very minimal impact.
Of course.
Sure, it's going to help the first-time home buyers, but they're already getting the help on the Conservative plan as well. So there's no advantage there, GST-wise, to vote Liberal. Then you look at the other main point for me is that Poilievre and the Conservatives they have a very clear understanding that the biggest problem we have is to get the bureaucracy and the red tape out of the way, man.
Out of the way.
It has to,
Exactly.
it's insane. It's insane, man. And so he's acknowledged that, but he's not saying, oh, and we, the federal government, are going to become home builders. What he's saying is we're going to get the government out of the way so the home builders can build homes.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, the Liberals are saying, Carney says, oh no, we're going to become a home builder. This is whack to me, man.
Yeah.
This one thing right here that I'm about to say is so extremely ridiculous that the media this is the one thing they should be all over. And this should point to the fact that this man has no idea what he is talking about. What they're proposing is that the Liberal government, the federal government, is going to become a builder and developer. Mm-hmm. And they are going to, the government, are going to build more homes than the entire residential construction industry combined. Think about that. Now they're saying not instead of us. They're saying in addition to us. So they're going to have to go find all the thousands and thousands. The residential construction industry is a pretty significantly large industry in this country, right? Yeah. It's like very significant.
And by the way, when you say residential, you're including apartment buildings and multi-units.
Yes,
so
apartment buildings.
Now it gets really enormous.
Yes, it's crazy, man. Mm-hmm. Imagine if you took every apartment builder, home builder, real estate developer in the country. We combined for somewhere between 200 and 250,000 homes a year. That's a pretty steady number. These guys are saying, oh, that's cool, but we, the federal government, we're going to become home builders too. And we're going to build more homes than all those people put together. It's insane. It's insane. When that should be enough right there, should be election over. These guys are lunatics. This guy has no idea what he's talking about. A high school student should be able to do the math on that. And I can guarantee you that either one of my sons, if I explained that to them, I said, but what do you think the chances are that the government, the little that you know about the government, what do you think the chances are that the government is going to build more homes than all of the home builders in the country?
Yeah,
my teenage sons would say, Dad, what are you talking about?
How socialist does that sound?
I was going to say the same thing.
Right?
That's the direction we're going.
It's communism is what it is, man.
That's right.
That's what they want to do. And then not only that, but
it's all about control, though.
Yes, of course. And not only that, it's like as if that's not bad enough. He's even made it very clear that the way he's planning on doing that is through modular homes.
Yeah.
And Brookfield is a modular home builder. The other thing to think about is let's just pretend for a minute that somehow the federal government could build more homes in the entire residential construction industry. Let's pretend that we live in that fantasy world. Who are these homes for? There's not 250,000. We're not 250,000 homes shy of housing Canadians every year. Mm-hmm. We're 250,000 homes shy of housing all the immigrants you want to bring into the country and then provide housing for. These homes that they're going to build aren't for sale. They're for rent. They're not going to build little shelters and little mini home parks and sell houses to people. These are homes that they're going to put people in social housing.
So there'll be a lot more rental situations, which, if I'm not mistaken, isn't that Brookfield's MO?
Yeah.
They're the biggest landlord, one of the biggest landlords in North America.
I think it's in the world, actually.
And he's a shareholder.
Oh, yeah.
A significant.
Yeah. He was the vice chair or some shit like that until he resigned. But I mean, clearly he's still involved, right? He's still pushing what's best for that company.
So circle back a little bit on Poilievre and his platform for the housing and all of that. You said he's removing red tape, bureaucracy, and all that. Like what types of things there will he do to kind of spark the private sector?
Well, what he has said is that he will, like, you know how the federal government has given cities money, that housing accelerator fund? Mm-hmm. Halifax got $80 million, like $70 million. But Halifax, Toronto, and Vancouver.
From the federal government?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think Vancouver got like over 100 million. Toronto got a whack, maybe a couple 100 million. Halifax got 80 million bucks. All three of those cities built significantly fewer homes the year after getting that money than they did. Like we built less homes this year than we did last year, like significantly. I think it was like 21% or 36% or something crazy. So what Poilievre has said is that he's not giving anybody any money unless they approve 15%, at least 15% more homes than they did the year before. So if you want your money, show that you're moving the approvals or you don't get it. Instead of here's the money, build more houses, and then the HRM goes, psych, we actually built 36% less houses.
Where's the
but
money?
We're happy to take the money. Who knows what they did with the money, man? Where's the money? Where's any of the money, right? I think about that often. Like, they throw on these big numbers like budgets and deficits and this many hundreds of millions to Ukraine and this many hundreds of millions here or there and whatever. I'm like, who really checks that, man? Who knows how much money's being spent and given around? Who knows how bad the financial position of this country really is? I bet you it's far worse than you realize. Like far, far worse. The future generations are never going to be able to pay back the debt. Not the way we're going now. It's impossible. No. Because when all this money that you spend, this, whatever it is, what did Carney come up with? Like $130 billion budget or whatever he just came up with. He's going to, as bad as Trudeau and his government was with running us into the ground and deficits, Carney's going to be worse, admittedly worse. He's come out and said it. If I'm running a business and I have to hire a CEO to run my business, and knowing what I know, if my business is the country of Canada, to me, there's absolutely no question that I would be hiring Poilievre and his group of people that when they put something forth, they go, here's this thing, and here's a bunch of information to back it up, and here's some documentation, and none of them are compromised. That's the other interesting thing about Poilievre is that you talk about people, how easily offended people are, and nowadays, if they can go back 20 years and find a social media post that you made that was inappropriate, they're going to find it and they're going to bring it up, and they have nothing on Poilievre. You ever notice that? Nothing. You can't find one thing that man has ever said or done that would be considered.
Yeah, I never thought of it that.
He's squeaky clean, man. There's nothing. They have nothing to say. The only thing they come up with is he's been a politician. He's a career politician. Like, well, yeah, but that's what we're trying to hire here, man. We're trying to hire a politician to be the prime minister. The guy went in high school. He wrote an essay saying that he wanted to be a politician. He's doing exactly what he wanted to be. He's living the dream. I don't hold that against him.
So Trump and Poilievre have one thing in common, and that's they both want change, and they're willing to get at it and get it done.
And they know the people who vote for them want the same thing, and they're willing to say and do what those people know needs to be done.
Right.
Right? But they also know some people are going to get pissed off.
They're going to lift up rocks and see what's underneath them.
Yeah.
And there's some things underneath them that people don't want to see.
Yeah, no.
Like, what Musk is doing, and he's uncovering a bunch of things, and Poilievre's going to uncover a bunch of things. Like guys like Mark Carney just aren't going to. By the way, Mark Carney didn't even live in this country during COVID. The other day when he said, "Oh, we stand with the people of Nova Scotia for the mass shooting." It's been 5 years.
Yeah.
Dude, you weren't even living here.
No.
You were living in England, running the Bank of England.
That's right.
What do you know about what we went through?
Yeah, he has no idea, man. That's
right?
just,
what he should have did is said nothing.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
This guy's just an empty suit. It amazes me that so many people have fallen for this. Whatever it is, like I'm not saying he's even. I think he's being exactly what he is. I don't think it's a facade. I think he's a bureaucrat. I think he's a career bureaucrat who's just been in that banking world, and that's great and everything. But imagine if the Conservatives leader, the person who was leading their party, was just a career bureaucrat banker.
See, I think he's more than that. I think he's a career elitist.
Well, that is what he is. Yes, for sure he is. For sure he is. Yeah. Right. And you can read it. You can. I had mentioned anyone that was willing to listen. I'm like, Jordan Peterson did a clip where he was basically spent like an hour talking about Carney recently, like a couple weeks ago. And spent some time talking about Carney and the book that he wrote and the values that he has and so on. He ran through it. And he didn't do it like a complete teardown of the guy. He actually talked about the fact that he does have a lot of credentials. He went to Harvard, he went to Oxford, he's got a PhD, he was the governor of 2 different banks, two different countries. It's like, so that's obviously a very attractive resume, but you can't then ignore what his values are. But you can see it. The rich people in the country, the boomers, are voting liberal, and the poor people in the country, the young people, are voting conservative. It's just going to come down to how many of each vote, I guess, or how many of them there are.
Yeah, but I think the boomers are misinformed a little bit.
They're wildly misinformed.
They're comfortable, like you said, and they don't want change. But
but Derek, how do the boomers get their information?
Yeah, from the mainstream media.
From CBC.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
How do we get our information?
Yeah,
social media.
That's right. And we also search it out. And if you look at something like our generation and those younger than us, you look at something and you might read a headline and go, I'm not sure about that. And so you'll put a little effort into finding out what the truth might be, right?
And my parents will say, watching the news last night and, Trump did this or this person did that. I'm like, okay, so do me a favor. Just turn on Fox News and listen to what same thing. And then take two of them, put them together in your head. You're sensible people. Right. And then figure out really what happened.
That's right. The answer's somewhere in the middle there, probably.
Exactly. The answer's somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.
But the boomers all listen to CBC or CTV, mostly CBC. And because that is very leaning hard towards the left, that's the frame of mind that they have.
Yeah, not just how they present the news that they present, but the fact that they don't tell you the news. Like, for instance, that report I mentioned, the government issued study or report that says the country is going to collapse. The middle class is going to collapse. People are going to be hunting for food here in 15 years. That doesn't even crack the news. I don't understand how that doesn't crack the news. So it's not just the spin they put on the news they give you, but the fact that they don't give you the news that you should even be aware of.
We'll touch on what we talked about earlier. If you were in the market for a new home, would you buy a new home now or wait and see what happens?
Well, I'd wait till next week.
That's right. You might be able to save 5% on.
Well, that's just it. Yeah. So right now, on new construction, I've actually been telling people, I'm like, I have to price your home based on today. And then it's going to be super weird. Like, let's say you sell a home today and it's 14% tax here in this province, the HST. And then you sell the quote unquote the same home to somebody else 3 months from now. And
that's right.
And then there's 5% less.
Right.
It's going to be really awkward because I would have sold those two homes to the same people on the same street for basically the same price. There wouldn't be much difference probably in 3 months. But there will be. These guys will spend, if it was $1 million home, these guys will spend $50,000 less.
Yes. So the people that bought at the higher price lose $50,000 equity right away.
Yeah.
That's right. So I hope that once this election, gets moved and everything goes, as the way I hope it will, that the market will pick up. Because I think there could be some pent up, demand for new homes.
Yeah,
I hope.
I would think that there's, because it's not just the fact that I'll wait for Scotty to come in here a second. Sure, man. No, he's got it.
I got it. Jesus, this plant's starting to get a little
cold,
loose
man.
on
You
me.
knocked my plant down.
Well, dude, look at this fucking thing, man.
You got plants everywhere, man. If you have somebody you're building for that closes right, Ryan, I just said, say closed now, and the same house closes in 3 months, they could pay 5% less in the tax, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's hard to, there'll be an awkward transition there. I was saying to Derek, because I'm like, forget about who gets in. Regardless, they both said they're going to remove the 5% GST component, right? But it takes us 12 months to build a house. So there's going to be this time period. There's going to be this awkward period where, like, depending on when you signed your purchase and sale agreement, you're going to spend 5% more or less than the other guy.
Yeah. Okay, so let me ask you that.
They'll date it on the date of agreement.
Are you sure? Or on the date of closing?
That will be even more difficult to manage. Because that would be insane.
Okay.
Accounting wise, oh my God, man, that would be a nightmare.
So explain that to me, because I would have assumed, like, if you sign up a project with me, it's 10,000 plus tax now. But when I finish the job and invoice the job, it's going to reflect 14% rather than 15%.
I don't know how they're going to do it. I kind of assume that the way they'll do that is in the form of a rebate, because think of how awkward that will be, man. If they reduce the price by 5%, especially if the liberals get in, because it doesn't apply to everyone. It's only first-time home buyers. So we'd have to call the plumber every time, say, hey, man, you can't charge me 14% on this invoice. You got to charge me 9%.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Because they're first-time home buyers. Yeah. Oh, man, I forgot. Then we're going to be chasing people. I would assume it's going to have to come in the form of a rebate.
To the builder or to the end
buyer,
user?
To the buyer.
That's what they did with the GST. The GST rebate's still on. There's a cap. was it 585,000 or something like that. And so now most homes today don't qualify for it. But Ryan's right. The best way to do it is to form the rebate.
On MLS, you sell a house for $1 million. They get, or the buyer gets 50,000 back in a rebate. So essentially, they paid $950 for that house. But is it going to show as $1 million?
Well, yeah, because his house is $1 million tax included. When really the house is $875,000 and $125 of it is tax.
Yeah.
And so the rebate comes out of the $125.
Yeah, but what you're saying is, and you're right, I've thought about this. I'm like, so what happens then? Are we listing it for $950?
That's right. That's what I'm asking.
That that's actually what you're paying? Because then there'll be this other element where the mortgage companies, like the banks, if you set up a mortgage with a bank for $1 million, they don't want you getting $50,000 cash because then you're financing the $50,000.
That's right.
They don't want that.
Yes.
So it's going to be, there's going to be some very awkward things to sort out there. And what'll be even more awkward will be the time period, like the overlap between those who qualified and those who didn't, like when it didn't take place. That's going to suck.
Well, any kind of change, that happens in any kind of change.
Yeah. But
I remember back in the day when they brought the PST rebate into houses, it was $3,000. And people were falling over themselves to buy homes. Now, this is back in the late 90s, so it's a long time ago. But people falling over themselves to buy houses because they actually let you use the PST rebate as part of your down payment. And houses were $90,000 all in.
Yeah, so would this
$3
be
grand was a
similar
lot
to
of money.
that? This will be interesting how they roll this out.
Yeah, sure will.
Because what if somebody, I can qualify for a $600,000 mortgage, but it's going to be listed at $640,000 because I can't. But I'm actually only paying $600,000. I don't know.
The first little while would be awkward, and once we get a pattern of how to play this thing out, it'll.
Yeah, we'll figure it out. But yeah, there will be that awkward sort of transition period. But yes, new home. I commented yesterday on I don't make a lot of comments on Twitter, but I commented yesterday. Polyev had mentioned something. They put a little clip about their housing plan. Exactly what we just talked about here. And I made a comment like, I've been a home builder and small real estate developer for 20 years. And essentially I said, this plan right here is what we need. Cut the taxes and fees, which will help us bring houses to market at a lower cost because taxes are in that price that we list. And also removing the red tape and the bureaucracy so that we can get more houses approved and build them quicker. Now, of course, most people, that percentage-wise, people like that comment because it makes sense. But then you get the odd, of course, always anonymous people that chime in.
Say what?
Well, there was a couple people who said, "Oh man, that's not how it works. You builders will just pocket the money."
Of course,
right? I'm like, dude, listen, man, take your builder daddy issues somewhere else, right?
Exactly.
That's just not even remotely how this works. You're just completely ignorant of how the world works. Well, and then I had somebody else was like, the builders will just take the taxes and fees and put them in their pocket. I'm like, is that what you think happens?
They're just haters, man.
Yeah, they're just haters, exactly.
Yeah.
Haters.
Yeah.
Right? Just no idea what they're talking about.
You get them in anything.
Plus, it's not only that. I'm like, my comment wasn't like, it really had nothing to do with me. My comment was about, from a home builder's perspective, I'm saying, listen, this will help us build more homes. Like in his video, he's saying, I'm going to unleash the building community, the builders, and get them to build. It's right there in his video. And I'm saying, yes, this will work. This is going to bring down the cost, and it's going to increase the number of homes being built. That's exactly what we need. We need lower costs and more units. And that's what I said. And then it's the, dirty builders. And then some guy chimes in about, that's not what we need. What we need is to put caps on these rents and stop these landlords from stealing. Of course. But I'm not your landlord. Take your landlord issues somewhere else. I'm talking about building houses.
It's funny you brought up the landlord thing. I read the articles on, rent caps and different things, and you go and read the comments. There's so many people that just assume if you're a landlord, you're evil and you're charging so much and you're making all this money. Meanwhile, you have people out there that might own a couple units. That's their retirement plan. They're actually not really making any money. It's a long-term play, and they need to feed their family as well. But it's just assumed if you are a landlord, you're bad.
Yeah, and I think the majority of Brandon, you could chat GTP this and shout it out to us, but I think the majority of rental units in the country are actually owned by individuals, not corporations.
That's
so it's
right.
like mom and pops. They own one or two rental units. It's not these Brookfield management.
Yeah.
Generally, the people that own a couple of homes, like Derek, and has a couple of rental units, they're the best landlords to have because they have some empathy.
That's right.
As
Exactly.
opposed to Brookfield or a big landlord that have a set of rules and they don't deviate from it.
That's right.
And so I'm sorry your situation is this, but you're out.
That's right.
Whereas a smaller landlord, you may say to them, look, you know what, I got, something going on and I'll catch up with you next month. And you probably get a little bit of leniency. So
Yeah, that's
the
right.
mom and pops are actually better to be with anyway.
Sure they are. The mom and pop landlords are definitely more lenient than the corporations. I've dealt with that myself. I had tenants in the past that, like, their rent was always late. They always paid it eventually. It could be a month late. It could be 2 weeks, whatever. But I'd always kind of let it slide a bit. It might be like we're into the second week of the month. I'm like, hey, girl, how about that rent? Oh, yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, I'll get it to you next week. Okay, cool. And then the next week, the next month, they hit it on time. And then, but it's like, I knew they were going to pay. But if I was Killam Properties or Brookfield Management, they were out on the sidewalk in that scenario. It would have been like, listen, this is the second time you've done this, so you're right.
When you're that big, you have to have rules.
I agree.
It's the only way it works.
I agree.
Yep.
Especially because, and for a number of reasons, but one of them being that it's just an automated process. So your staff has to have instructions. Yeah. If their rent's not paid by this day, you send them this letter, but they got to follow the rules.
What's Poilievre's deal on immigration, man? Because you know what? That's one of my biggest pet peeves.
And what he's been saying is, yes, there still will be immigration, but controlled immigration. But what the other guys are saying, what the liberals are saying is 100 million people in this country by whatever year they said, 2060 or something like that. I don't know what it was, but 100 million. That's insane, man.
Is the conservative government going to at least like stop the tap for a minute and reorg it and say, okay, now we're going to open it back up, but under
I'd like to think so. The other thing that Poilievre has mentioned, which gives me some faith in the fact that he's aware of it, is that he's mentioned how there are this enormous number of people. I think it's like 5 million, believe it or not. 5 million people that somewhere in the next year, whatever visa they're here on is expiring. Mm-hmm. And so those people theoretically are supposed to leave.
Yeah.
If they haven't secured, employment or whatever.
And rightfully so.
Yes. So that's a big job, man. Mm. That's like more than 10% of the population. Mm. More than 10% of the current Canadian population are people who are here on a visa that is going to expire soon, and therefore they should be leaving.
I just would like to see immigration more under control, and furthermore, criminals that are coming into our country, known criminals, not to be allowed in.
For me, my main concerns, obviously, which I'm sure is like many people, the economy is a big concern, but immigration is a big concern for me.
Safety's big.
And safety/crime, but the safety crime part to me is a result of mismanaged immigration and mismanaged economy. Because when the economy goes to shit, people get their crime on because they have to, right? They're trying to steal to survive or break and enter to survive, right? Yeah. So of course that's going to happen. In a society where there are fewer hungry and homeless people, you're going to have less crime than you have. Mm-hmm. And our crime's like out of control, man.
Yeah, and what scares me, like the U.S., they have, every person or second person has a gun. Yeah. And they can defend themselves.
Yeah.
We don't have any of that.
No, and they're coming for them. And if the Liberals win the election, I think they're coming for all.
How do you defend yourself?
You don't. You won't be able to defend yourself.
Well, that's terrible.
Yeah, you're right. It's like, I know it sounds melodramatic, man, but I don't say it to be dramatic. I mean, we talked about this before, but between what we already know to be the case, and then you have government reports coming out that solidify what we already suspect to be the case, which is the complete deterioration of our society, both economically and from a safety perspective and so on. When you look at that's what's coming, unless there is a government that is elected that acknowledges that and is tackling it and trying to do something about it, if they just kind of don't, if they pretend it's not happening, then in other words, it's going to keep happening. Ironically, I think that many of the people who have the means and who are comfortable enough to not really be as dramatically not as affected at all by the economy and inflation, for instance. Some of us are screaming about the fact that we want the inflation to stop and we need to get things under control. We need fiscal responsibility and so on. But it's kind of like the analogy of like being on a ship in the middle of the ocean, right? And so the ship's taking on water We all know it. There's a small percentage of the population that don't realize the ship is sinking. They're walking around like they're still buying drinks. But the ship's going down. And I look at the conservatives as the people, and not just the Conservative Party, but the conservative voters, as the people that realize the ship is sinking. So we have to do something, whether that's life rafts or find out what's leaking or whatever. We got to do something. And then there are those who don't realize or pretend the ship's not sinking. But then there's also these folks who are going around banging holes in the hull and speeding up the rate at which we are sinking. And we're just kind of letting them do that. And those will be the people that are going to vote Liberal again. They're going to sink the ship completely. And then some of them are going to stay around like, oh, what happened with this stupid look on their face 5 years from now when people are kicking their front doors in and stealing their cars out of their driveway. It's already happening in Toronto. It's coming this way, man. I've said this before to a number of people. Like, we're all Maritimers. We've grown up here our whole lives, and so have our parents and so on. Maritimers, in the bit of traveling that I've done around the world, Maritimers are the nicest people on the planet.
Yeah.
Period. Canadians are known to be some of the nicest people in the world, but Maritimers are one more step again nice. And for that reason, we are not built to live in crime-ridden cities as Maritimers. We're not, man. We're just not. That's not who we are. We're just not built that way. We're built to be giving everyone the benefit of the doubt and holding doors.
Yeah,
for
we're
people.
not mentally tough enough.
No, and we let our guard down. We let people in our personal space, right? We're not built like that. We're not built like be on alert type people.
We have to do something about changing this cancel culture, and then people will be able to speak their mind.
Well, I'm worried about that. Just being here today.
But you also think about it. I mean, you're thinking about it from the perspective of you wouldn't want, say, a customer to, if you took the business side of it out, if you took the customer side of it out of it,
I wouldn't care.
if you were independently wealthy and you wouldn't care what you said, right?
No.
You'd still be, because of the type of person you are, I know that you'd still be polite about it. You'd be respectful.
Absolutely.
I know you would. But
Absolutely.
you would say what needs to be said.
That's right.
And so what's happening in the world, in the Western world, and the U.S. is different because the U.S. actually has free speech. We don't have free speech here anyway, right? But what's happening in this country is you have those who have the financial means to, who are independently, financially stable enough to not have somebody cancel them and have it affect them financially. Those people speak up. So if you work for the government, you don't speak up because you lose your job. If you work for armed forces, you don't speak up. If you're a school teacher, you definitely don't speak up. So, and then even people who are, say, have businesses who might want to speak up, but they don't because they don't want to turn anyone away. I think we're in our situation in the home building business. It's a bit unique for us because 99% of people we would talk to would agree with us anyway, right? There's not many people we're dealing with who have these like.
I wouldn't attract them.
No, but I just don't think there's many of them out there anyway because I think they're. You can just get a sense from, and it's not a matter of like who you'd vote for. That's not what we're talking about. It's not a matter of whether or not you'd vote conservative or liberal. We're talking about these really fundamental principles and values.
Yeah, so I guess what I'm saying is, like, Michelle brought this up the other night. She's like, she said, I wish I was able to speak my mind on Facebook and Instagram of how she feels as a conservative woman.
Right.
Where she's jealous that a bunch of her friends who are very liberal are spouting things 3, 4, 5 times a day.
Right.
She can't say anything because they all jump on her.
Right. Yeah.
And and she's worried that it's going to affect her business or people will hate her.
Yeah.
Where she has to toe the line and let them speak, but she can't speak her mind. Now, she's not going to say anything bad. She's just going to say, look, I'm a traditional woman. I believe in this, and I don't agree with this, and that kind of stuff.
That's right.
So a lot more people it would be very helpful to the conservative mandate if people could speak their mind without worrying about less customers going to see them or whatever. Right?
Yeah, and I think you're right. And so I think if the Conservatives win this next election, the chances of that happening will be improved. And if the Liberals win the next election, that will get drastically worse.
Yeah.
Way worse.
Yeah.
It'll be like the UK. People will be knocking on your door and the police will be questioning about a meme that you posted.
Yeah, that happens now.
Yes. And it's coming this way, man. It's going to happen. That's terrible, man.
That's happening in the UK now.
Yes. And it's not like it's not a one-off thing, man. Every day. Even, what's his name? Keir Starmer, the PM or the president or prime minister, whatever they call it in the UK. Even he came out and said something like year to date or in the last year or something, there have been 400 people arrested and charged in the UK for social media posts and memes and so on. And we're not talking like these people aren't spewing hate speech. Like they're not saying they want to kill people and that shit. They're just posting a meme that offends somebody. That's all it is. If you offend somebody, they'll consider it hate speech over there. They're going to do the same thing here. We have it's already there. Bill C-63.
Yeah.
It's already in it.
I was going to ask you about that because we've talked about that before. Trudeau put in a bill that basically says on social media, you can't see this news outlet or that news outlet.
Yeah, I think that's
basically
Bill C-11. I think that's like the censorship.
Yeah, they monitor
CRTC
what the citizens are able to see. So they, tell me that's a free country. And nobody talked about that. They just put that bill in and everybody went along with it.
Well, because the Liberals put it forth, the NDP supported it, and here we are.
Yeah.
Right? The Conservatives were always pushing back against this stuff, and they still are. But if the Liberals win this next election, man, like even this kind of stuff probably comes to an end. I don't need the cop showing up at my door and knocking on the door because some wingnut called in and said they were offended by what you and I said on the podcast. And the next thing I know, I'm like, oh, that's nice. And so now what? I can't travel to the U.S. anymore because I got a criminal record in Canada because I offended some nut bar. I'll be out of here before that, man.
Yeah.
Right? I'll go down to the States and then I'll talk more shit than you've ever imagined. Because when I'm down there, I'll be standing down there behind the American free speech laws. There's a reason why all these guys that have the means have or will leave the country.
Yeah.
Right? People don't realize that, man. It's like you can kid yourself all you want, but and now it's not, you don't even have to kid yourself because this report that came out from the government, but we all know that anyway, that if things keep going liberal, it's just going to keep getting worse in this country. And I'm sure you guys know people just like I do who have already said very clearly, business owners and people with money who have said, if this keeps going the way it's going, I'm out.
I'm out. Yeah.
I'm taking all my shit and I'm leaving. And if all the money leaves, what do you think the people without money are going to be? What situation they're going to be in? Yeah. If 80% of the taxes are paid by 20% of the people.
Yeah, good point.
And 10%, half of those 20% leave.
Now you're done.
The rest of you are completely done.
That's a great point.
Right? And that is what will happen because those who have the means will leave. You're not going to stay here and have the government take everything from you. Look at like the people we build for who come from China and they have this enormous problem just trying to get their money out of China. It's a big deal, man. Mm-hmm. They'll do the same thing here. It'll be, here comes the law of you're only allowed to take this much money out of the country every year. That's what they'll do, man.
Yeah. Well, they're starting in the UK. I read a story the other day. This guy, he went to the bank to get £2,500 out of the bank to buy a motorbike for his kid.
I think I saw this, yeah.
And the teller's like, what's the $2,500 for? He's like, because I want it out of my bank account.
Right. Yeah.
And she's like, well, you have to tell me more. What's it for? And he's like, it's none of your goddamn business.
Right.
And she kept pressing him. And he started to get really annoyed. And he's like, it's for a motorbike for my kid if it's like it's any of your business.
Right.
And she's like, oh, I need to know, where are you buying it from? Exactly. How much is it? And it escalated. Right? Yeah. And until he outed her and basically started to record it and, made a big fuss. But that's what it feels like it's going to.
Oh, it will, man.
When we go into the bank to get $3,000 out to buy something, a new bike or an e-bike for our kid, and they're like, well, what's that $3,000 for? Because they do it now at $10,000. That's the magic number, right?
10,000.
Yeah. What's that for? And you have to sign a federal document. And I'm like,
that's right.
$10,000 doesn't go a lot very far anymore.
Nobody should be telling anybody what they can and can't spend their money on. It's your money, man.
Yeah.
It's your money.
Yeah.
And you've earned it and paid tax on it.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's what's coming, man. But I don't know. I figured it was a good idea to have you guys in here this week so that who knows, man? Who knows what next week brings?
Yeah.
Now, I'm hopeful that goes the other way. And next week we're like driving around, windows down,
hookers and blow.
That's right. Yeah. That's right.
That's got to come out.
Yeah, we'll see. That's good. Anything else, boys, before we wind it up? you have any offers?
It's great, man. Thanks for having us. Appreciate it.
Next time we have one of these chats, we'll do it in Fox Harbor.
Yeah. Okay. We were talking about that. We got to pick a date.
Well, you know what Amy said? She might have an idea. She said, you know, you and Scott should just like get in the truck, and I should take the phone and turn it sideways, and you and I should just get a hard tea and start rapping.
But you know how many conversations we've had like that? We solved a lot of problems in your truck, man.
Yeah, man. And we'd have to edit like 80% of it.
Well, it was my truck most of the time because I was chain smoking.
That's right, yeah.
But now I don't. No, man. I stopped 4 years, 5 years ago, 4 years ago.
Yeah.
I don't even miss it.
No, that's good.
Yeah.
That's good, man.
Yeah.
All right, boys. Well, thanks for coming in.
Yeah.
Thanks, man.
We'll do it again. Later.